Remember seeing this and thinking, this is a pretty cool intro. And now you're probably thinking, is this the intro to Batman Arkham Asylum? Well, you would be very wrong. This is not the intro to Batman Arkham Asylum. This is the intro to Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Trust me, King Shark, I'd have the same reaction as well. Usually with videos on this channel, we talk about games, a lot of the retro ones, even some of the newer ones like today's video. And usually it's a trophy hunt, or it's just a review of the game, or it's just a nice little trip down memory lane. Well, this video is going to take most of those elements, and we're going to be talking about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. We're going to be talking about its announcements, we're going to be talking about its current path that it's on, and we're also going to be talking about its inevitable downfall. So stick around and let's dive in. Back in 2009, Rocksteady had released the first installment in the Arkham trilogy, Batman Arkham Asylum, on August 28th, 2009. It was for the Xbox 360, PC and PS3, and it was met with so much critical acclaim that it spawned two sequels, Batman Arkham City and Batman Arkham Knight. Now those are three games that I'm going to cover in another video because they are some of the best games I have ever played. And also, despite Arkham Origins not being a part of that trilogy, it's really good. It's really, really good. It's so slept on. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit today because these games walk so the likes of Spider-Man could run, or Web-Swing in this case. But it's incredible how Rocksteady, known for making these fantastic Arkham games, would create something so controversial and so subpar. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. With the release of the Arkham trilogy, things could only go up from there. Arkham Knight came out in 2015, that was the last time we saw anything remotely related to the Arkhamverse. But how did they get it so wrong? Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was announced August 2020 at the DC Fandom event. Because of the pandemic, it was a virtual event, a lot of stuff got announced, a lot of good stuff. Snyder Cut, at the time Black Adam, and Suicide Squad. And the reaction to it really wasn't that good. The trailer came out and people were starting to notice a lot of issues with it already. Character design, the sort of stray from what made Arkham so good, the fact that it was single player. You know, they wanted to make a online multiplayer game, which at the time did sound cool to me because, well, I love the Suicide Squad, I love DC, and I love the Arkham trilogy, and if it was an excuse to jump back into this world, I would absolutely do it. However, the game was met with a bit of criticism, like I mentioned, the way it looked, the stray from the path that the Arkham games had founded, and then the game was just getting delayed again. There was some issues with leadership at Rocksteady, which we are going to touch on very soon, and this game just didn't seem to have anything going for it. There was a state of play in February 2023. Now this was after the game had been delayed 2 times, and people were starting to get really, really worried because we didn't really know a lot about what was going on with it. We caught whispers of inner turmoil at the studio, but nothing was either confirmed nor denied. And then in February 2023 we had a PlayStation State of Play, which is where we would see a glimpse at the gameplay, and yeah, it didn't really go so well. The game from the get-go looked bad, and there was a big emphasis on shoot the purple glowy thing, and that was what put a lot of people off, if people weren't put off already. Not to mention the fact, as I said, that they wanted to do a live service multiplayer game. You know, you could play a single player, but multiplayer was the intention behind it. You know, you have Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark and Captain Boomerang as the playable characters, which then when the game would launch we would start getting more and more characters as time went on. Brainiac's the big bad of the game, and that's about it really. So initially, before this state of play, the game was due to release in March 2022, and it would get revealed at the end of 2022 that this would be the last time that Kevin Conroy would voice this character, because unfortunately before the game shown this trailer he'd passed away, and so it was kind of nice because it was like, well, we get to see Kevin Conroy as Batman one more time. But unfortunately, because of the reputation that this game was starting to build, it was kind of like, this is the last time that we're really going to see him. Suicide Squad? Really? I was always hopeful that this game would turn out better than it had looked. and I was soon to realise that that was a huge mistake. I should not have thought that at all. After the feedback with Shoot the Purple Glowy thing and all of that, the game was delayed to end of January, beginning of February 2024. And if you own the digital deluxe version of the game, you would get 3 days early access, and it was just marred with issues. One of the biggest issues was the game would start at the very end, so you'd effectively already done the grind, beat Brainiac, and it was really, really bad. I didn't experience this glitch, luckily, but I know a few people who did, and they were not impressed. As I say, leading up to the release of this game, I was getting very, very hyped. I did find myself getting very excited because I have been put off of live service games a little bit. I still dabble with some of them, but unfortunately, it's a part of the gaming world that I do just want to go away, because it's, especially after everything that's happened with Concord, it's something that I just kind of want a lesson to be learnt about it. The biggest issue I think I had with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, especially when looking at the gameplay from state to play, it just looked very dull, and the only thing that it had going for it was traversal. Now, originally this game went through so many concept changes. It was going to be using vehicles to get around, and then it was going to be focused on melee combat, but that eventually became the gun gameplay that we have now. And I think my biggest red flag with it was, especially where combat was concerned, was the 3 games of Arkham, 4 if you count Origins, that had preceded it were all melee, and it was all, like I say, all single player. And you know, you saw the world through the eyes of Batman, and this time you're seeing the world through the eyes of the Suicide Squad. And when you've got a character called Captain Boomerang who doesn't use a boomerang, he uses guns, it just raised a lot of questions. It was kind of like little droplets of logic. It was just kind of like, well, what? How? And it just got worse from there. The difference in the gameplay from the State of Play 2023 and the live release in 2024, there isn't really that much of a difference apart from some interface changes, and things just look a bit more polished, but that's about it. During development of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, as mentioned, the game went through numerous concept changes, vehicles, combat, traversal, it all changed. And during 2022, Sefton Hill, who had created the Arkham games, had quietly jumped ship, and once people caught wind of that, that was kind of a sign that things weren't going well for this game at all. And it does baffle me that the guy who created the Arkham trilogy would look at what he'd created for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and think that this was a good idea. And it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. It looked like they'd heavily nerfed a lot of the grinding and looting and gear aspect of the game, because there were moments throughout the story, which was fantastic. To give them the credit, the story was fantastic. It looked like, it really looked like you could play it safe, and it definitely felt like that. I don't remember playing through the story and having to change any of my gear, or even upgrading anything to the point where it would level me up. It played it very safe in that regard, and it's hard to believe that this is a game that had effectively been on the get-go since 2015, and this was kind of what they came up with. There were rumours that there was going to be a Superman game, and kind of wish we got that, because they just couldn't seem to crack the Superman code, at least from a player perspective. But in this game, they really did show that you could do a Superman game. Granted, it was through AI, but they've shown that it could work. Just before 2023 was out, I remember getting access to the beta, and it was NDA, couldn't record nothing, couldn't share anything about it. It was strictly NDA, and my time with it, I was just kind of like, it's okay, it's not amazing, it's just kind of, it's quite mindless. That was the vibe I was getting from it. There was a lot to be desired with the beta. Traversal was easily the best part of it, and that's something that would carry over into the full game. The traversal was amazing, especially playing as Deadshot. I will say Deadshot's traversal was probably the best one, but I found it really hard to like the other aspects of the game. More so, like mentioning about Boomerang using guns when he has boomerangs. It's literally in his name. He's not called Captain Shotgun, it's Captain Boomerang. Combat and even some elements of his traversal just didn't really feel all that fluid. and it just felt quite clunky at times, and that was one of the issues that I think contributed to the inevitable sort of response to this game. Fast forward a few weeks after the beta, we got our hands on the full release. I paid the amount for, I think it was 60 or 70 quid for digital deluxe, and I really wish I didn't. I just really wish I didn't. I jumped on at the midnight release and I was expecting to find a lot changed. No, it was exactly the same. I spent the opening hours of the game exploring Metropolis, getting through the prologue, dealing with Brainiac's forces, getting to grips with sort of the mechanics of the game, the tutorials that would pop up every 10 seconds, because if I hadn't played as a character for so long, it just felt the need to remind me, because I predominantly played as Deadshot throughout the whole of the story. Got acquainted with members of the Justice League, got a feel for the world again, seeing it from the eyes of the villains, being in Metropolis instead of Gotham City this time around. It had so much potential. This universe that Rocksteady had created, the Arkhamverse, it was so well done, and what made the Arkham trilogy so great was how self-contained it was, and especially when it came to Arkham Knight, and this is something I'm going to talk about in another video about these games as well. With Arkham Knight, there was a lot of planted seeds about sort of what exists outside of Gotham, mentions of Keystone, even mentions of Metropolis, and because LexCorp exists in Arkham Knight, and it was just one of those games where it was so self-contained because it knew what it wanted to be. This game doesn't know what it wants to be, and it shows. It really shows. And it's like at the start of this video, the opening of the game where it's like a callback to Arkham Asylum. Yes, that was a nice little touch, but it just didn't quite pack a punch as much as it did the original time it happened. And every time I go back and play Arkham Asylum, the opening to that game gives me chills. It's just so well done and so atmospheric. I want to play them right now. Once the prologue section of the game ended, as I say, we get into Metropolis, get acquainted with members of the Justice League, and then somewhere down the line we end up getting in our first interaction with Brainiac. Now, Brainiac goes as fast as he shows up, and unfortunately, despite the amazing talent of Jason Isaac voicing this character, he is really annoying, and it's a shame because I really like Brainiac. He's one of my favourite villains, but we seem to be getting to a market of he's getting used in a lot of stuff, and the way this game uses him is really weird. Like, he can do stuff that I didn't even know he could do. I don't even think that he can do, and I was just kind of like, is that it? It just kind of feels like you've changed this character to fit how you want to tell the story, and there are a lot of issues with how Brainiac is integrated into this world. First off, I just want to say as well, speaking of voice talent, Mark Hamill is incredibly missed as Joker, who we'll talk about very soon. Kevin Conroy's Batman just knocks it out of the park. To give him credit, he sounds like he's having a good time playing an evil version of Batman, but it's not enough to save the game. It just really isn't. If there's one element that this game does carry on from the Arkhamverse, it is definitely the bad boss fights. Now, I could say the Arkham games are amazing, but some of the boss fights are dreadful. So let's get into topic about those. So first off, we have the Flash. Now, I'm not going to go down the route of IGN and say it's too fast, because he's the Flash, he's meant to be fast. But the problem I had with the Flash fight is I felt like it went on too long, and I just felt like it was too manic. Manic is a word I would use. It was too kind of all over the place. It didn't feel, because it was so early on into the game as well, we haven't had a version of the Flash in this game before. Every other member of the Justice League we have not seen in these games at all, other than Batman. So this was our first use of those characters in the Arkhamverse, and I just didn't really care enough, and I think that was one of the big issues I had with it. These characters, I just don't care enough, at least from this universe perspective, because I haven't had any time with them. They do things a little bit differently in this game, with sort of them being evil and Brainiac being involved. But the Flash boss fight I just found really monotonous and just very... It went on a very long time, and then the fact that we get a cutscene of Boomerang attempting to piss all over his body, that was the kind of edgy humour that this game was trying to go for. And there are parts in this game where the humour does really stick the landing, but moments like that, I just kind of found myself like, what? That really happened? Okay, that's what you were going for. but again, we'll talk about something like this a little bit later on. Next up, we had Green Lantern, and the Green Lantern fight was okay. It was, again, just like I haven't had any time with this character, and especially when it's Jon Stewart, I'm not too familiar with Jon Stewart. They kind of teased this weird angle between Deadshot and Green Lantern, and I don't know if it's racially motivated. I don't know what the purpose behind the angle is, but it just kind of fell flat on its face. And again, after that fight, we get a cool scene where King Shark becomes Green Lantern very briefly, and I think people were reaching out to Rocksteady saying, can we get these as skins in the store? And Rocksteady were like, no, that was the only time that you're ever going to see it. So it's like, okay, a bit of a weird choice, but that would have looked really, really cool. And then next up after that, we get introduced to Superman, but we don't fight him. We also get introduced to Wonder Woman a little bit before that as well. Now, Wonder Woman is the only member of the Justice League who doesn't get turned. And there's this cool sequence of Superman and Wonder Woman kind of fighting across Metropolis as you're escorting Amanda Waller in an ice cream van, which was a choice, I will say that. And Wonder Woman gets absolutely done in by Superman. So you don't actually fight Wonder Woman, and then you have the fight with Batman, or should I say you have the encounter with Batman, and then this was the moment in the game where I felt like it was going to piss a lot of people off. Now, I didn't see any of the leaks of this game before it came out, and I remember seeing a lot of people were very pissed off about how it was handling something, but I didn't know what exactly it was. And then when it came to this moment in the game, I was like, this is it. This is exactly what's pissed people off. And the way they handle dealing with Batman, it just kind of felt like, at least from a timeline perspective, you just spent 3, technically 4 games bigging this character up, being this force of good, this force of nature in a way, and you just kind of chump him out like that. And it just kind of, again, it just felt a little bit disrespectful to Kevin Conroy. Obviously, at the time of recording that, they wouldn't have known that Kevin Conroy was going to die end of 2022, but it was just so like, that's how he goes out. I didn't like it. It didn't vibe with me. It was just kind of like, oh great, another member of the Justice League easily dispatched of. You know, a lot of the boss fights involve you tipping the favors extremely in your favor, and it was just a bit weird. I didn't like it. And then we have the boss fight with Superman, and much like the Flash fight, it was just a little manic, a little all over the place. To give it its credit where credit is due, it does do a good job of showing how fast these characters are. And, you know, taking a jab at you, IGN, if the Flash is going to run fast, he's going to run fast because that's what he can do. But with the Superman fight, you don't really know how to keep track of him, because by the time you spot him, he's got a helicopter and he's hanging it over your head, and he's just going to drop on you. That was the only boss fight that really gave me considerable amount of grief, and I think because I was playing as King Shark, I didn't really have the mobility, and so I struggled a little bit with that one. After that, you do your own incursion mission, which is kind of like the setup for the end game, and then you do the Brainiac boss fight, but it's not really a Brainiac boss fight, it's just a reskinned Flash fight, and then you kill Brainiac, and then this is where they sink the hooks in, and this is how they know they've got you. So at the end of this game, you find out that there are 13 Brainiacs, and you only killed one of them. And this is where the gameplay loop for Endgame begins. Now, this is where you level up your gear, this is where you get better weapons, this is where you can do more missions with the likes of Penguin, Poison Ivy, Toyman and Gizmo, upgrade your gear a lot more. I can't tell you how many times during launch I replayed those missions over and over, and anyone who's played this game knows exactly what the gameplay loop is like. Now, Season 1 didn't start straight away when this game came out. It was maybe a month or 2 before that, and again, just replaying so many missions, leveling up gear for when Season 1 initially came out. Season 1 comes out, I think it was around March or April time, and we get our first look at Joker, who I am adamant is not the Joker. It's just a poor copycat. I don't know how to describe this version of the character. There's something very Jared Leto about him. He was described as being so insecure that he masks it with chaos, and basically he masks it as the Joker, and I was just thought to myself, well, that's not the Joker then. This is just somebody pretending to be the Joker. And I think because especially Arkham fans have become so enamoured with Mark Hamill's version of the character, that is the best version of the character that's out there, especially in this universe. Best thing about him, again, traversal. That is the only thing that I can big up in this game. That's it. Season 1 comes out, and now we were told that these characters would be free. We could get them. Game comes out, or the season comes out rather, and you've got to level up 35, 40 times before you can fight Brainiac to unlock the Joker. Now that would mean, given the variety of missions in this game, that would mean you would have to do potentially the same mission 35, 40 times. Or you could do what they want you to do and spend £10 on unlocking the Joker, so you get him straight away, to then you can use him to grind those 40 levels to fight Brainiac to unlock the Joker. Do you see how silly that sounds? Not to mention as well that with Season 1 they included a Battle Pass, which this game shouldn't have one. It's not Battle Pass material. I don't understand why. The shop in this game is absolutely dreadful. You know, the skins, the stuff that you get, it's not what I sign up for when I play an Arkham game, and it's kind of like, who is this game made for? And it's not for me, which hurts because I've been a massive fan of these games since 2009, and kind of I feel like legacy players just kind of switched off very quickly. That for Season 1 was my switch off point. I didn't go back to it for a long time. Well, until Season 2 came out. Now, when Season 2 dropped, Mrs. Freeze was announced, and it's not that I have a problem with what they did for the character. It's more so the fact that there are certain elements around it where it's kind of like, for example, they gender swapped Mr. Freeze and it's now Mrs. Freeze. I remember seeing a lot of people, and this was something that I thought of as well, because we're going to touch on this in a moment. You know, you gender swap Mr. Freeze for Mrs. Freeze, but Nora is still Nora. There's a lot of elements in there that really are political, and this was kind of something that made me look back on the game, and there were a lot of things that are politically motivated, you know, and that all comes down to 3 words: Sweet Baby Inc. Now, Sweet Baby Inc. are starting to make the rounds in news, especially with Concord suffering massive blows to the community in terms of, you know, they came out August 23rd and then they shut down 2 weeks later because nobody was buying the game, nobody was playing with it because, well, it sucked. Simple as. And it's the same with Dustborn. Now, Dustborn is another one that was apparently made for the modern audience, but the question remains, who is this modern audience? It's not me. Who did you make this game for? Your modern audience are begging for representation, diversity, and they're not showing up for the product. And unfortunately, much like Concord, real life, crashing and burning, and it's just not ending well. But that's only a tiny fraction of why Suicide Squad is failing. Suicide Squad is failing because it is a game built on a specific niche model live service that unfortunately is charged at AAA retail price, that you have to sink more money into for skins, battle passes, things like that, content if you wanted to. And it's just, unfortunately, the product is so poor, you don't really want to put money in it. And the reason why I stepped away from it was because I thought to myself, that's really cheeky, and you've told us that these characters are free, and up until they're released you have not mentioned that you can pay for them. And I just kind of feel like it's very predatory. It's very predatory monetization, and they did the same thing with Mrs. Freeze. You know, only this time they reduced the grind a little bit, but it's still pretty bad. Buy them, grind with them, unlock them. After fighting Brainiac, I just switched off. I found myself getting very numb mentally playing this game. It was just kind of something to fill the time. I was going through a bit of a dog water time earlier on in the year when it came out, so that was how I kept myself busy. And it's almost like I had a wake-up call when I saw kind of how they were conducting business with seasons, and I just kind of thought, nah, this is the switch-off point for me. Now, the only issue I had with that was I was in the middle of platinuming the game. I got all the trophies relatively quickly on launch. I think it was pretty much launch week. And then I had one trophy left to do, and this has took me 6 months to do. It's to get the squad level to level 50, and it took so long because I had no one else to play the game with because nobody wanted to play it, so more fool on me. And a couple of weeks back I finally did it. I finally got my 20th platinum for my PlayStation account, and that game officially got deleted. Arrivederci. I have not touched it since. Another thing that contributes to this game's downfall, well, is just people's attention. So it didn't really have the best launch player base wise, and as of right now it's not really doing very well. When this game launched, it was met with 13,459 players on Steam, and while we can't see what those numbers are for consoles, if we were to go off trophy data, we get a pretty good idea of how that looks. At the time of recording, the player count is about 116 on Steam. Now, before Season 1, that dropped below 300 players and would kind of fluctuate somewhere between 300 and 250, sometimes even dropping below 200, but not by much. And then when Season 1 launched, they had an increase of maybe 2,000 players, and then it's just steadily dropped there. And when Season 2 dropped, nobody batted an eyelid, nobody cared, just nobody cared. Trust me, the final product shows. There are times now where it's starting to drop below 100, and Concord dropped into the 30s, and funny enough, the day I saw that was the day they pulled the plug. As soon as Suicide Squad hits those numbers, game over. To be honest, I don't even think this game started. This game's been over since launch. I mean, bland world, awful character design, questionable choices. There is a lot to take into account. People's reasons for stepping away may vary. I don't really know what everybody's reason is, but for me, I just feel like it was just a massive disappointment, and the Arkhamverse is capable of so much. Now I believe that Rocksteady are working on a new single player game, but after the recent news that unfortunately Rocksteady are having to lay people off, one person who was on paternity leave has now been fired. But again, we don't really know how true this is, but this is news that kind of starts circulating, and it's so bad. Like, I do not wish anyone to lose their job, but there was a report that came out earlier on in the year about the work environment at Rocksteady, and people were saying it was toxic positivity. You weren't allowed to voice your opinions on certain things because there was a trend to follow, and Sefton Hill would have all these ideas thrown at him, and it was unfortunately bottlenecked. He wouldn't give us an opinion on them, and so people were already implementing them. And then when people had been implementing them, he was like, "No, they're not good." And everyone was like, "Well, we've already implemented it because you didn't get back to us, and so it's already in the game." And a lot of people were scared to talk about this because it meant that they would potentially lose the job. And unfortunately now, because of how bad the game is performing, that was unfortunately a real possibility. So many people went over to work for Warner Brothers on Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut. They would do weekly announcements about what was happening for the game, and then after a while they said that we will not be doing weekly announcements anymore, which was a telltale sign that this game was dying. There's a skeleton crew working on this game right now. You can't convince me otherwise, and it's just a shame because it had a lot of potential, and unfortunately they really shit the bed with it. I really wish I only had positive things to say about this game. As I say, it's a part of the Arkhamverse. These games walk so the likes of Spider-Man could run, or web swing, and you know, they were a springboard for games like Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth: Shadow of War, and then the upcoming Wonder Woman game. That's in a bit of a dire situation right now as well. People seem to not be buying stuff like this anymore because it's kind of forced, and they just want a good game. They don't care about what happens during development. They don't care if you're happy that you shipped the game. They don't care about that. All they care about is the final product. And for players like myself who have loved the Arkham games since its inception, it just hurts to see them handled in such a way that it's just like a lack of disrespect it's like a lack of respect, for the universe. And it's just one that, unfortunately, as mentioned, it's been monetized in such a predatory way. The more asked about having your money. It's like there was a promise of an offline mode before launch. Well, it's been 8 months now and we still haven't got it. So I don't think if we're getting it now, then we're never going to get it, which further shows that this game is going to die more of a horrible death than it's already dying now. But if you ask me, Suicide Squad should not see the light of day at all. Definitely not. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and whatever your thoughts and opinions are on Suicide Squad, let me know about it down in the comments below. Keep it nice, keep it civil, and just have a lovely day, guys. But thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed what you see, this very in-depth, or at least more in-depth than a lot of the other videos that I've done, leave a like, comment, subscribe for more, and if there's anything that you would like to see me cover, even if you'd like to see me talk about Concord or even Dustborn, toyed around with the idea of doing it for a video, then do let me know below, and have a lovely day, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you all soon. Thanks, guys.